And we're off.
And we're off.
Premature podcasting.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Una Brosnan from the Revolting Podcast. And
John McCaskill from the Revolting Podcast as well. And good to see everyone back after New Year and Christmas.
Yeah, it looks like you had a good one. That looks like a new shirt, John.
New shirt, new house. Moved on the 17th of December.
Yeah.
Everything went okay. No Christmas tree up, obviously, but I am wearing my new Santa shirt from Santa. And for those that are attuned to metal, it's an Exodus. The Bay Area thrash giants from the early 80s, Bonded by Blood album shirt. So yeah, it's nice and warm in these chilly climes.
Yeah. I mean, nothing like this to beat the January blues. I hate personally January is my in Glasgow. It's dark. It's miserable. It barely.
It is. I find I quite like the slow start to the work though. I don't know if you get that, but I mean, no, you don't get that. I get it's like quiet. So I do find that it starts off quite quiet, and I just love getting into my inbox, cleaning. The first week in January is my most organised week in the entire year.
Oh, I think
and
it's
then
my,
it all
my
goes
week
to
of
hell.
depression. I like literally once I come back, I'm like, 5 weeks of this. Unless I'm looking
So you
forward.
start the year in the same way you finish it.
No, I'm up and I'm at the end of December. I'm going out with dinners,
Ah,
socialising
right, yeah,
the whole
yeah.
shebang. Like I'm already lining them up for 2026. But I was just going January. I hate if I could get transportate myself to any other time transportation to any other country with heat. I would.
Okay, well you'll have to get. Is Chile warm at this time of year? Or is that Baltic?
Okay, we don't need to go to that extreme, but it's very hot out there at that time. Yeah, but yeah, let's.
So, what was your Christmas and New Year like?
It was good. It was good. Lots of family stuff, and never a dull moment. Kept busy with nieces and nephew, and general mayhem and godmother duties, auntie duties, the whole shebang. But no, it was good. It was really good.
Excellent.
Never dull. I can't complain. Back in Ireland, it's always good.
Brilliant.
Yeah, catch you.
What are your New Year's resolutions, guys?
Una?
I'm going to say, and look, we're going to go jumping into Latam now, but I mean, you know, I've been out in Latam quite a bit and investing a bit of time over the last 2 years, so I have to learn Spanish. I mean, it's non-existent. You're holding me to account here because I have to get my head in Spanish and more Chilean Spanish, hopefully. But let's see how it goes. I mean, that's Chilean Spanish is up there with Glaswegian, Liverpool and Cork.
Hey, mi español es muy bueno.
Dos cerveza, por favor.
Hola.
I haven't started yet. So that's my one. What's yours, John?
Well, it's not learning a language. I want to lose some weight. Is that a bit cheesy?
No.
I need to lose some weight, but I've been saying that for ages. I'm probably at my heaviest, so there you go. So I need to and I know what I need to do. I've got the diet stuff. I've got all what I should be eating and everything else.
And what are you thinking on the exercise side? Anything?
Not starting anything off that I'll give up in a week. So at the end of last year, I started doing some Tai Chi.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because my Instagram started showing me these Tai Chi for over 50s apps and things.
I think you might have to dive into the Tai Chi later, or at least get shorts on this.
And being a fifer now, I wasn't going to pay for an app. So I found some stuff on YouTube.
Brilliant.
And I've started doing the old sort of,
Oh, this is going to be quality.
Wow.
This is going to be quality stuff,
yeah.
Guys. 2026 is looking warmer already. That's cheering myself
So I need
up.
to improve my diet and probably build on my Tai Chi.
Yeah, fair dues. Excellent. So, John, going back into 2025, we kicked off actually the podcast with a 2-part series, and we covered the fossil fuel ladder part 1, which was very much orientated around Africa and looking at transportation and getting in. Do you want to do a quick recap on just some of the highlights on it, but
glaze from memory, right? Okay, yeah, but yeah. So the fossil fuel ladder is that sort of assumption that that societies go through from sort of coal, from biomass, burning logs, coal, oil, kerosene, gas, electricity in terms of power, and then sort of, renewables, etc. It's that kind of, you've got to go through all of that to go to the other end as you become more affluent, as societies develop. And so long story short, started exploring that just from an interest in how that is one of the bases for fossil fuel forecasting. And I read an article about technology leapfrogging in Africa, and it was actually about EVs in Nigeria, and it just caused me to start having a look at that area, and effectively that assumption that that they, from a transportation point of view, they will go through the same sort of evolution that we do, and that, so oil and sort of gasoline usage will sort of swing from the west to sort of Africa and Southeast Asia, is based on something that's very weak, very fragile, because of technology leapfrogging, because the technology is modular and it's accessible, so 2-wheel, 3-wheel, etc. The fact that actually EVs the cars and SUVs, etc., isn't actually the main mode of transportation. It's 2-wheel, 3-wheel, personal transportation, hail riding, etc., and buses, e-buses, shuttles, in certain corridors, etc. And that is that is beginning to decarbonise. So it's the fact that you've got all this technology which is modular, which is different, the fact that infrastructure is either weak or not there, so you can't base it on what we have. And that the current pain is expensive. In other words, doing it would be very expensive in the same way that we do it. So all that is set up for this leapfrogging, and it's messy. It's not perfect. It's not that the entire sort of continent is going, but you've got certain examples like Ethiopia we chatted about that is banned cars. You've got Nigeria that has a great ambition but isn't matched by policy yet. So it was really looking at how that concept in that particular part of the world for transportation is actually a very fragile concept.
Yeah, and so different to what we would have expected.
And so different, but it shows that we have this Western bias in terms of how things are developed, because we just look at how we did it and assume it's how everyone does it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I suppose I took that learning just from our conversation when we were looking at LATAM in particular, and I wanted to deep dive in, Latin America has been heavily influenced by the Europeans over the last hundreds of years, and getting under the skin, I suppose, and understanding the flavour, it's going to be a lot different there, and that's certainly something I've learned from our experience in Chile, but also looking at some of the work we've been doing in Colombia as well. And I have a Brazilian sister-in-law, so obviously I have dived into the culture quite a bit. I've had many of the Capriña, visited her family, how things are going, how they take understanding the people, which is really, really important, I think, both for Africa and for Latin America. So I suppose for this, I really wanted to get under the skin. What makes them tick? Why some of the behaviours they are what they are? Where was the history around the infrastructure development, and where is their flavour right now, and where are they in renewables, and where do we see them going forward as well, and pushing through up the ladder and through the ladder as you
and of course we're looking back on a COP30.
Yeah.
From the same part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, COP this year, COP30 was in Belém, which is right up the top of Brazil. It's quite a distance. You're still talking about 3 hours north of Rio by plane. So it's
gosh, I didn't.
Huge country, and like where they chose, I suppose. Look, there was a lot of method in the madness when they were choosing Belém, purely because they wanted a real clear signal on bringing the communities to the heart of the discussions, particularly in the Amazon region.
So the indigenous First Nation, is that a term used?
It's more indigenous communities. I suppose First Nations we hear quite a bit in the likes of Canada, but it's I was bringing them to the heart of it, and obviously we're all familiar with the impacts of deforestation, and obviously the Amazon area and the forests there are very much termed the lungs of the world, and the impact this has, and it was quite I suppose really proper to have them at the heart of the discussion. Another debate whether it was appropriate from an infrastructure perspective. There was quite a few I suppose, difficulties there, and you're going to have that. We're trying to go to different countries to hear different perspectives, so you kind of have to play that in, and the heat didn't help either. I heard it was 35 to 40.
Well, I know that you follow it really closely. You know, what's your view of how successful, unsuccessful, you know, it was? Because we're now obviously looking at starting the process towards 31, COP31, but I was...
And actually 31's heading towards Africa, at Addis Ababa. So, yes, I mean, my frustration, I've been quite vocal over the last, since we had COP in Glasgow, I took a real keen interest in trying to follow it, or trying to see how vocal they were when they moved out of Europe. And it was really, really frustrating watching it go through the Middle East in particular. I was last year, I do a few updates. I try to do a few updates every so often, generally around the first week, where some of the major themes are addressed. But last year I found myself going to Gulf News to get some of the information and updates from the actual in-day proceedings, which was really frustrating. Why mainstream media aren't covering it, giving it the airtime if it's that important? Why isn't the big coverage here?
I never really saw too much of it
so,
in the mainstream media.
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, you had Sharm el-Sheikh and you had Baku over the last couple of years, and they've been disappointing. Couple of inroads on policy and regulatory framework. I mean, this year, you know, the thematic pillars, there were 6 of them, very much orientated around energy in industry and transport. Then you looked at, obviously, from the forest being the Amazonian location, you had the ocean, and then biodiversity played heavily into the second one. The third one, which is actually quite an interesting one now from a trade perspective, was around agriculture, food and systems. And I'll come back, there's a big deal going through the EU Parliament, or a big fight in the EU Parliament at the minute around the Mesecure deal, which is very much orientated around a trade deal with some of the Latin American countries. And it orientates around a number of topic areas or themes, basically, but very much centred around trade. But where the trade-offs are is quite an interesting one. So we'll put a pin in that one and come back. The other one was cities, infrastructure and water systems. And obviously water systems have been quite prominent. We see a lot of that in Africa, where clean water is really being a big challenge. And I remember living in Australia many moons ago, and I couldn't get over how stringent they were and how forceful they were around
in terms of water management
conservation, quality of water, where we would take it for granted. It doesn't stop here, but having quality water is actually being jeopardised here in the UK, maybe less so in Scotland.
We see that down south, don't we? I mean, we
Exactly.
we see, you know, the reports coming back from Thames Water and the state of their infrastructure, and it gets quite political because of the asset ownership and the way that that's been sort of dealt with. But you see that a lot more here as well. I mean, how from someone who doesn't follow it as much as they should do, you know, one of the big stories for me obviously was not surprising was, you know, the vacant seat from the US. I mean, that was going to be known, so that would have probably been the how it was going to be managed, and the proceedings would have kind of built that in. But how
there were some high-ranking officials there, high-ranking officials there, but I mean, very much, I don't think they were crying that he wasn't there, to be honest. I mean, he made a very uncomfortable speech in the UN on the run-up to COP.
So there was still a delegation there?
There was some, but they were quite junior in comparison to what you usually have there. You know, there wasn't the big, delegation
the
coming in.
Vice President with the stuff and all that.
No, and I mean, the language has changed. You see the DOE, you see the individuals. The language has changed, and they don't believe in climate change.
I know. Yeah,
it's a con. But look, I think a lot more could be done, and it would have been a distraction. So I think at least they got on with it. There was plenty others there, but there was those notable absences. India wasn't there as well, which was a bit disappointing, and a couple of other major.
Based on how they're progressing in some cases, India.
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
odd,
again, you're coming back to that tension between policy and ambition and industrialization as well, and the pull back into those, kind of old traditional methods. So there is, and India probably is something we should look at in the future, because it is quite an interesting dynamic, and the tension and the push and pull there is quite heavy. But I suppose what makes and going back to that human aspect, very much orientated around Latin America, was that the cultural impact, and that centered heavily for COP and driving the dynamics and driving the behaviors and how we change that. And I suppose that is going to be resonating quite a bit with the likes of India, and now you're seeing quite a change in the US as well. MAGA is under a lot more pressure. It is being challenged for even within its own walls. You are seeing challenges fracturing. Now. It's fracturing, but look, let's see. I wouldn't be getting my hopes up quite yet. Let's see what happens. And I mean, the final one in COP was very much around cross-cutting, looking at those elements that can cut across each of the thematics, where the impact can go. So,
So what do you mean cost-cutting?
I mean, we'll be looking at things like climate finance. Finance is quite different in the Global South. Yeah. Looking at adaptation, biodiversity, how they address it, looking at how you deal with communities in particular. It's a hell of a lot different to Europe. It's just a different dynamic. The people, traveling around there, before I ever got involved on business in Latin America, I traveled, I backpacked quite a bit. I love it. I head off. I did Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and then got Christmas with
I've never been on that continent. I've never been further south than Houston.
You're going to have to come. I mean, it's brilliant. It's vibrant. It's different. Trust me, it keeps you on your toes. It's not easy, and the people, you see a lot of challenging conditions for the locals. But I mean, going into the likes of landing in Lima, it's a fast, dynamic city. It's, understanding the cultures, again, watching where you are, the political impacts there, the push and pull and the tensions of all sorts there. Going up then into the likes of the Cusco area to just go, like I was getting my way over to do the Inca Trail, but like the people are amazing. They might in some cases not have very much. They're so welcoming, and I think maybe the European side has lost a little bit of its welcome and its flair and its drive. So I think there's a lot we could actually take from Latin America. But then as you move down, like I jumped on a bus and I had to laugh again. The influence, it was. I was halfway down into Bolivia before I clicked that actually the bus was owned by a couple of Irish lads, and I was like, "What?"
As happens,
why? In the middle of nowhere, and they mammied us across the border in Bolivia because it is quite they literally threw us across the border. The Americans, I will say, did get a lot of mothering because they were the hardest to get across the border. It was quite interesting. And then going through, coming into La Paz and seeing, as you see, like very difficult township kind of setups. I mean, there wasn't a word on the bus coming in, because if we got stopped, we probably weren't going to make it. It was really rough. You could see we were going through kind of heavy gangland area. Then you get into centre, you're dropped at your hotel. There's no dropping you on the side of the street. You were dropped where you were going.
So it's a bit like Shawlands in Glasgow.
It's not quite. Maybe Friday night at 3 a.m. after in the good old shed days, but not quite there. But like you meet the people the next morning, the shutters open and it's a different story. Yeah. It's the daylight comes, the welcome is there. They might not have a very prosperous country right now, but the ambition, the drive, their hard working is amazing. And then you go down into Chile, and I think I've had the best border crossing ever on probably one of the highest boarding crossings in the world, going into Chile, going from Bolivia into Salt Flats, come off the back of that into Chile, into the Atacama area. And I've never been approached by customs ever when they said, "Any drugs and bombs today?" I mean, that caught me offside. I went, "No, not today, thanks." But, it's just the humour they had, and it was just the dynamic and the welcome you got again. So I think, how you address that, I suppose I was really keen to get under the history on it and really see, where these cultures came from, what makes them tick. And you'd be surprised, a lot of it actually is linked back into Europe. And I was pleasantly surprised as I went through each of the countries, kind of going, I didn't know that.
So, I mean, Bernardo O'Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, the Irish influence goes quite a bit when it goes to Chile.
Is that right, Bernardo
Yeah,
O'Higgins? Yeah,
Senor Bernardo O'Higgins, yeah.
yeah.
He's,
As a good old Irish come Latin
yeah,
American name.
I did not know this when I went into Chile. I mean, there's off the back of this gentleman, he's a son of an immigrant who was he was a colonial officer, Ambrosio, I think it was, O'Higgins. So basically, this lad he was of Irish descent, Spanish linked as well. Came over to Peru, and I think he met a girl, Colleen, as we say in Ireland, and magic happened, and off we went. Bernardo was he was brought up, I suppose, in Europe quite a bit, so he's a heavy European education. Spent a lot of time in London, I suppose, brought back that Irish nationals kind of flavour and enthusiasm coming from Europe as well. Highly educated, came into Chile in a very interesting time, and it was revolution. So he was one of the first leaders and founding fathers of Chile. So really brought that, he was a military leader and political leader. So quite an interesting dynamic.
So he actually played a part in that historical concept in terms of civil society in Chile, in terms of the setup.
Absolutely. If you go into every street of a major city in Chile right now, there is an avenue named after him, which is surreal to, rock in. And you hear names like, obviously, O'Higgins. I mean, I was over there recently, and you look at one of the biggest military museums out there, and there is Bernardo's name right over the top of it. So it's quite surreal. But, I mean, the Irish weren't the only ones, influencing there. Bernardo did appoint a Scot, actually. It was a Lord Corcoran, and again, going back into the industrial side and where the British came in quite heavily, was looking at that. He was Glaswegian, so what was he going to do? He was naturally going to get involved maybe in the industrialisation and shipbuilding, of course, was a natural kind of going. But Bernardo he was first to set up the Navy, and then it was headquartered out of Valparaiso, which is an amazing town outside of Santiago. So he was he really heavily leaned into the industrialization, and obviously that shipbuilding reach came back, and that's where you have quite a heavy presence today around that, naval and shipbuilding expertise, and it goes right down the coast to a number of jurisdictions as well. So again, that flair, but the Germans were also in there, which was quite interesting because it brought that industrialization, engineering aspects right into the heart of it. And even today, we see the grid heavily influenced by the Germans and how they bring that
Wasn't
learning.
in the mid-40s, was it?
No, the 2019 there was a bit of agreement with Germany as well, so there was a bit of a kick up on that. But it equally has similarities there's huge grid restrictions up in the northern part of Chile, which is quite interesting now when you think of the dynamics in Germany in the early days of offshore when we were there, trying to get power in from the Baltic down into the demand centres. There's a lot of parallels you could draw there. But you, again, shaping it quite well. And even if you move across to the likes of... I was listening to David McWilliams recently, and I did smile because he linked back in a Scot element as well into Argentina. Argentina is a real mix. And
because he was talking about a Welsh community as well, wasn't he?
It wasn't him, actually. It was another friend of mine from when I was talking. I actually met an ex-colleague at Floating, and she's Welsh, true and true. But she off the cuff brought up about she was asking about South America, and she was talking about Patagonia, and
that's right
there's Welsh communities. So there was a ship that came in the I think it was just kind of it was the late 1800s, early 1900s, so brought in a lot of the Europeans. And of course, where was that ship originated? Scotland, Glasgow, shipbuilding, straight in. So brought a lot of Scots there. There's areas there which were heavily influenced from an agriculture perspective in Patagonia. There's now turbines on some of this land. You would have seen a lot of the engineering elements come in. So there's I think there's actually an equivalent of St. Andrews in southern part of it's in Buenos Aires actually. So that influence in history linking back into the Brits. But equally then there was an Italian flair, French, Spanish. So it is quite a European...
Because there was the British sort of mercenaries that came to Colombia after the Napoleonic.
Yes,
wars.
absolutely, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Bolivar and his revolutionary as well. So.
Yes. So
and probably stayed.
And you've got a heavily influence there from a trade perspective, and obviously the Spanish culture, Catholicism, the whole shebang. But it's, again, bringing that flair. But equally, you'd African come in as well into northern Colombia. So you have that Caribbean influence and African. So that makes it quite a complex...
It's a real sort of quilt. I mean, it's a real patchwork quilt of...
Yeah.
So, I mean, going, taking this back to our neck of the woods kind of thing, from the energy side and stuff. So you've got a real interest in Latin America and work in Chile, and you've been out there a lot. And I'm really interested, how homogeneous is Latin America from a renewable standpoint? I mean, or are the countries almost like island oriented? You know what I mean? Europe's getting more connected, right? Even though it's not where it needs to be. Take us through. Can you paint a picture?
Absolutely. There's a lot of differences between each of the countries, and I suppose you've seen like high penetration of renewables across Latin America as a general. Anything between 50 to Uruguay is close on 100.
And there's a lot of that. Is it only just hydro, or is there a lot more of the more current renewables and stuff?
I mean, hydro has been a guiding star for them, to be honest, up until now. I mean, there's challenges there when you're looking at drought and climate change influence to it now. So it is quite interesting, and they're looking at de-risking that. But you're seeing solar, you're seeing onshore wind heavily influencing, you're seeing offshore wind come into the mix quite heavily. It's still emerging, very much emerging. And this is where I think, the policy and regulatory frameworks and you're saying about how they all approach it is going to be quite different, purely because how they tick is a lot different. Uruguay has really embraced it. They are very, very European. They are the perfect child. They have leaned into renewables. They have got it to scale. This is the way you should do it, and they've done very, very well. They are now kind of interconnecting with the likes of Brazil and looking at neighbours as well down in Argentina.
So are they providing sort of a how-to? I mean, are they providing a bit of a how-to for other countries down there, or are they finding their own path, or is there too much of a difference to replicate?
I think they're I suppose there's still a lot of competition as well, but like they are very much looked in on how they did it and how they really leaned into that and did it very quietly. But your countries around them, I suppose, are the tension there is quite different. You've got different political type of orientations, particularly around Brazil is quite complex. It does have that European flair. It's got a lot of hydro, but it has a lot of complications from a policy and regulatory perspective. It's got a lot of political changes as well. Obviously, you would have had Bolsonaro, who was very Trump-like, and it stagnated a lot of the climate agenda. You have Luna now after coming in, and he's leaning into this. But again, there's tensions, and I'll come back to the Mercosur deal, which is around that EU trade deal with some of the Mercosur countries. But that's more, I suppose, leaning into the food aspect, which is climate impacted as well. But if you go up to Colombia, they're leaning into it hard. I mean, offshore wind in particular, they have identified a number of zones. We've seen one particular international company get awarded there. They've done a lot of time in their policy and regulatory framework around that, and they've got an auction regime. How it's different then, if you look at Chile, it's a very much a merchant market, and they have left the industry build their own pathway there. It's very much influenced from a private development perspective. So you haven't seen that state.
How does that translate into the offshore wind?
Yeah.
Because I can see how, because the technologies onshore is a little bit more mature, I can see how you can move into that down there on the onshore side. But I mean, offshore, but it's that's a different. I would have thought that for an emerging market trying to get its first offshore wind off, you can't just go.
No. It like building a market, no matter where you go. Offshore in particular needs a lot of work.
It needs support and mechanisms.
It needs lift. But the benefits, I suppose, come from the industrial aspect. And that is where, I suppose, the business case, and we have to get the business case. And Brazil is really struggling with that at the minute. But the business case around Chile in particular, I suppose, orientates around their industrial hubs, like the likes of Bio, which is a region, and orientated around a city called Concepcion. And you do see a lot of parallels with that in the likes of Hull and Grimsby. You know, history in the steelmaking side, they've had a lot of job losses, particularly at a place called Huachipato. And then, you know, you've got a lot of heavy coal generation there as well, which will be.
So you've also got these sort of transitional industries that are maybe sunset industries as well.
Absolutely, and you are seeing that domino starting to fall. And I suppose where if you look to the likes of Grimsby and Hull and Sheffield, those dominoes went to zero for quite a while, and that area was quite decimated from it. But I mean, I haven't been in Grimsby in quite a while, and I need to get up there. But what caught my attention was the impact of renewables, both offshore and onshore, when I was there last. You know, I went to the hotel. The breakfast in the morning was all technicians. Yeah. You know, the chat, I could have spoken to anyone there. It was really, really orientated around a new industry. There was a vibrancy. You know, you could see people's heads up. They see the opportunity. They see next generation staying at home. And I think this is where, particularly where we're seeing the opportunity for Chile, you've got a really prosperous area which is contributing highly to the national GDP. So how do you ensure that we stop the dominoes before they fall? But looking at it from a business case perspective, if you are to attract inward investment here, you need to have mechanisms, systems and processes and mechanisms here to ensure that you can have robust business cases to bring that industrial aspect, to be able to be more, you know, lean into the opportunity to create jobs and industries around that. I mean, the BOB area has, you know, it's got some very vibrant ports, particularly around container shipping. It has a very strong shipbuilding aspect there. They've got navy yards there, which has got a huge program of works for its military and its neighbouring military as well. So how do they use those skills? I mean, they've got a wealth of welding, looking at that, you know, that ability to build. You know, they have a great standing position to move across.
So they do have that domestic industrial base that's relevant.
Yes.
You know, that you know, the fabrication, construction yards offshore. Yeah. So they've actually got some of this to leverage.
They do, and I mean, I compare it to, you know, Busan, where you've got floating offshore wind in South Korea, and in particular, it's not going to be easy. They will need to train up, and they will need to diversify, but the opportunities there if they wish to follow offshore wind. You do have a merchant market there, so hence that is going to have to be.
So that, I mean, that can be. That's going to be challenging from an offtake.
It's challenging, and this is where the business case goes. You know, working with governments to ensure that we have an opportunity to put mechanisms, policy and regulatory framework in place to support that. Realistically, we are looking at
potential corporate PPA market
corporate there PPA yet, down the line. I mean, at the minute it is very difficult in the investment markets to look at pure corporate PPA. I mean, even here a merchant tail is quite difficult, and this is in quite an immature market. But it's looking at the push and pull within the industry. How do you ensure that we can work with jurisdictions to put systems and balances in there to see how we get that business case in place is going to be the challenge over the next while. But there's a great opportunity. The attributes, the natural resources there, they do have ability to upskill. The opportunity for industrialization and transition is there. But, you know, there's a lot of hard work to be done. But, you know, they're certainly not afraid of it. One of the other areas, though, is the communities. And going back to that indigenous side. Looking at the indigenous side, community engagement, and this is not just Chile. This is right across Colombia, Brazil. How you get that, how you work with communities. And I think it's a lot different. Your starting point is the community before you even think about, you know, going in for plans. You have to engage there, because the distrust and I suppose the history over the last couple of years, not even couple of years, decades, has been quite complex, and working with these communities is absolutely non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable.
And because of that, well, they're therefore they must be quite powerful in terms of these communities. They've got they've got a voice, they've got weight, they've got the ability to influence.
Absolutely. If you look at, say, the La Guajira area, it's the northern Caribbean coast in Colombia in particular. That has been quite a flashpoint over the last decade in particular. And this has been orientated around the onshore wind side. If you look at the offshore wind potential there, that has been identified as something that they have great opportunity. It's in excess of 11 metres per second for wind speeds, which is huge. You know, it's on a par with northern Brazil, but again, they lack grid. So getting the infrastructure in place is going to be a challenge. We have seen onshore wind developers actually have to cancel projects there, to the point of they had the turbines ordered and had them up for sale.
They don't have the
so
connection. Okay.
It goes that deep, and that's where, you know, this is where you see risk being assessed by inward investors in particular, and understanding that is going to be really, really important.
From an offshore wind stand, I mean, so we work, so with the firm I've been in Brazil for, we've had an office in Brazil because obviously we're in oil and gas and maritime as well, and we've worked in Colombia. It's a slow it's a slow route, isn't it? I mean, you know, from the out, you know, from being a bit distant from my team and your work, you know, Brazil, massive industrial base from an offshore side, but in terms of, you know, making the economics work for offshore wind, because of the, you know, the price of renewables, whether it's from hydro or wind, makes that very difficult. And I think their play is therefore sort of hydrogen and ammonia.
Yeah.
But of course, there's no market for that at this point in time. So that business case doesn't. So that looks to me as massive potential, but the market just doesn't stack at the moment. Very generalist statement, and I know there's more to it than that. Colombia is smaller. Is kind of seems to be a bit more sort of more of a pathway to me. I mean, is that right, or am I being very sort of too generalistic about that?
No, I mean, they're looking at incorporating it, and I think a lot of it is seen from, you have a certain, if they want to decarbonise, and looking at the demand side in particular, what is going to be, what's the weighting on the decarbonisation side, whether it's minerals. And I think going back to that critical mineral side, we talked about Argentina, that is at the heart of the triangle, looking at coupling it with Chile and Bolivia, and looking at how they can decarbonise some of the mines. You're seeing a lot of new technologies on the onshore side going in, but will it be enough to decarbonise these? You do need the infrastructure and the grid.
Is there a drive to decarbonise those mines? I mean, is it beyond just a sustainability report from a corporate? Is there a real?
There is a drive when they need power, and power.
So it's more of a we need power, and it might be easier to. Okay.
And decoupling, I suppose, from international pricing and
so it's pragmatic, just needing the
being
power.
Pragmatic, yeah. Okay. And I mean, how are they going to do that, and the scale of what is required from a demand side? But equally, then the infrastructure, and going back to, you know, EVs and going back into decarbonising the infrastructure within the various countries. You've got huge population centres around LATAM, embracing that, but equally that industrialization side. They recognize the opportunity of bringing inward investment, whether it's data centers or it's looking at large industrial manufacturing. That is the opportunity as well to ensure that we have a way of balancing that. Offshore wind doesn't have to be the cheapest. It needs to be part of the mix.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be the cheapest. It's the economics work. It's the demand, the price of electricity, the alternatives. It's just does it. Is it a piece of an appropriate puzzle? You know, it's. I saw last month a chart on LinkedIn by a Gear Insights, Alistair.
Yeah.
And it was basically the cost, the cost of all the different projects within Europe.
Yes.
And it was quite flat for about 250 megawatts, and then it goes up at a tail, right? Yeah. But however, as he pointed out, some of that tail is in actually high power cost markets like Italy, etc. That actually a higher, you know, a more expensive project can still fit into that because it's basically what's appropriate to the market.
Absolutely.
And is that the kind? I mean, that's what you're
yeah,
talking
absolutely.
about.
And then the interconnection element, Europe is very much interconnected. So how do you bring that mix in and balancing in with the interconnection challenge? But we have quite a physical challenge, with the mountain ranges in Latin America. They're not the easiest. They're pretty high. I'll put it to you this way: there's precautions when you're flying over the Andes. It's buckle up. We're going to have turbulence. There's no drinks, no bathroom, no nothing when you're flying over the tip of them.
Can Elon and his boring company not come in and...
Sorry, with who?
Can Elon Musk and his
he
boring
can.
company come in and...
I'm not going to be extending the
Some-
invitation there, but yeah. I mean, John, just looking at and wrapping up the discussion and bringing it back to where we all started on the fossil fuel ladder, we're seeing that push and tension, basic push and pull, basically, and the tension in the policies and the governments in Latin America right now. But bringing it back to where you started in the last episode in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... What I've heard is that... one, it's fascinating, but also that things are messy. It's got the tension, and that really echoes what I've been sort of reading about in Africa as well. Is that there's ambition, and in some places there's quite aggressive policy. In some places the policy yet has to catch up.
Yeah.
In some cases it's bottom up. It's just happening. The electrification of transportation is just happening because certain conditions are there. So it's even in Europe we sometimes see this thing about the ambition and the 2030 targets and the policies behind that. Boris Johnson at was it Glasgow that he lamped 10 gigawatts on, and then Labour came in and did another bit, and everyone it's that ambition and policy, and I think things are messy. But lots of things can happen when things are messy.
Absolutely.
Right? You know what I mean? It's so that's where I get quite a positive spin out of it. So I think we will revisit this, I think, because we're going to get some, I think we're sort of nailing down some really interesting guests that can delve into these areas. So that's going to be great.
And to bring it back to COP, actually, particularly with, say, the Global South, we have seen a number of positives come out of COPs over the last couple of years, particularly around funds and for climate frontiers. And this is where I think the likes of Africa and LATAM can lean into. They're very much influenced. Their financing side is completely different to Europe. They lean on concessional finance. The interdevelopment banks, the World Banks, the CAFs. These are highly important alongside those funds, and how they make the business case for these funds is going to be instrumental on the pace and the penetration of renewables, I think, going forward. Again, linking back into the impact into the communities.
And as well as that, one of the things I'm quite interested in is exploring how the transition is actually in these communities can actually be, it's tied up to economic growth. It's entrepreneurs. Yeah. It's, so in other words, actually it's almost, yes, the world of finance, climate finance needs to happen, but actually a lot of this is granular and stuff. And I'd like to sort of explore that in the podcast to come when we're getting some guests in as well.
Absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity to invite some of our listeners and watchers actually to please contribute to this. This is certainly something we want to dive into more. We want to understand Latin America. So if you are from there, if you're involved in markets there,
if you've got something to say, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to correct us. Correct us is right. Or happy to take a call and dive into it with them as well as possibly as a guest. I mean, we're in January, John. Looking back at last year, what was your favourite bit last year? Favourite bit, personal or professional? Okay, right, okay. So personal was my great-granddaughter Lily being born.
Yes.
Which drove my move to go nearer the family. So that was just awesome. That's just absolutely fantastic. Blessed. And professionally, I'll be honest with you, this is going to be really cheesy, but it's actually the full year of being able to continue to work with colleagues in the renewable sector. And of course, the bit that I tend to live in most is the offshore wind sector. It's been a tough year. So it's not as if there's been like huge highs per se, because it's been like trying to explain an issue that's happened. It's, stop on an 80% finished wind farm or whatever. So it's I think the fact that we're just keeping our heads down and we're being positive. It's still got we've still got great spirit in the industry.
Yeah.
And so to me, the highlight is actually getting through 25 in the spirit that we have done. So a bit cheesy.
Getting through 26, is it?
Well, getting through 25 was my highlight.
Oh, right, okay.
Right, so I think, that's mine. It's not a single event, but what about yourself in terms of personally and professionally?
Personally, it was getting back out there. I had a pretty slow 24, to be honest.
Right.
I had a couple of fun episodes in the health side, so it stopped me from travelling quite a bit, which I really, really missed. Confined me to the home office, which was nearly killing me. So getting back out there, meeting people, being able to have the energy to get out and chat to people again was brilliant. There's no stopping us now, but that has to be, it really, really kind of was central to 2025 for me. I mean, working with colleagues and going back to your point there on the spirit and working with the industry has been amazing. It's been tough, but actually I like being on the shoulder of, say, the front runners. I prefer to be the underdog rather as an industry. I think we're hungrier in an underdog.
Less froth, more hunger.
Exactly. We had a little, as we talked about in our first episode, we had got giddy. So I think it's grounded us quite a bit. And yes, it's been tough. Yes, we had to be really, really sympathetic to some of our colleagues who were having an extremely difficult time. But I think, what I saw last year was people coming together, particularly at the end of the year, and really kind of supporting each other. And I think that's how I want to see us go through 2026.
So leaner, more realistic.
Yeah.
Looking at a sustainable growth.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Smarter about how we do things, how we want to progress, and where we want to be. Yeah. And just let's get this right.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. And so I mean, we are very close to a really important event, which is the AR7. Right, which will be due in a week or so. So what are we thinking about that? I mean, I've done various presentations and webinars and things on my thoughts, but it's great doing it in the year because I can't be proved wrong or right. But we're getting very close to actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's AR7 is huge milestone for us in offshore wind. It's a huge milestone for 2026 and looking at how we support our supply chain going forward. But we know we need to prepare for both scenarios. It could go amazing, or it might not go as great as what we would like. And I think we have resilience within our industry there. I really am earing towards the point of we do see a lot of value come out of this. We lean into it, and I think we hopefully have bottomed out a little bit on the downside. If we can get this and we have the right mix and the right recipe in AR7, I can see us start to slowly go on an upward trajectory.
And I think I put my neck out. I think that's where we're going to be. I think that the capacity that we will get will be less than what the whole industry wants, because there's going to be people, but we will get constructible projects.
Yes.
At value for money that the government and the Treasury is kind of sort of looking for. I suspect that there'll be that some of the capacity will be able to be built quickly. There'll be, I think, floating is the dial that I would love 3 projects to come through. Probably 2 unless things are adjusted. But but to me this is AR5, AR6 getting things a little bit getting back into something. AR7, the non-price factors, the 20-year duration. Yeah. It's rebuilding, and it's setting up AR8 to a degree, right? What I mean? It's setting up AR8, and also we've had Holland, the one back in November that didn't happen. We obviously had Germany. We've had the French project that didn't happen. So I think what the UK with the AR7, I think, will be showing a sort of a trajectory from a policy standpoint in terms of this, and I think that will influence hopefully other jurisdictions as well, because there's been a lot of stuff auctioned that didn't get taken up in 20. You know, we started 25 thinking, oh, there's still a lot of auctions, still a lot of capacity coming in. Actually, the industry's pulled back from some of it. And I think this is setting us up into a little bit more of a steady trajectory. And I think it's that kind of maturity or maturing, which is not being too fluffy, not being too bubbly.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful.
So sustainable pace,
sustainable pace,
prices.
sustainable build out. Forget about the 2030. 2035 is the new 2030 for me. What I want to see is that annual drumbeat.
Yeah. Consistency as we go through.
And the supply chain has some certainty, so it can start investing. It knows, it's got a feeling of what the next 5 to 10 years is going to be, builds confidence, it's realistic. I'm quite hopeful that it's going to be sort of a proper couple of steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to Scottish Renewables Conference.
Yeah, because we can chew it all over then. Yeah. We can sort of say, well, John, that was rubbish, you were wrong.
Well, you were right the last time on the predictions. I was hoping we'd get a budget announced maybe after, the budget announcement in November, but it was a lot earlier. So let's see how you go.
So you're looking forward to SR?
Yeah, I'm looking forward
offshore?
to seeing everyone, I think, at the end of January. I just need to kill the January
Well, you need
blues.
to get out because it's wet and miserable.
I know. But yeah, I'll be out with bells on, I think, come into January after a 5-week month. So yeah, and I'm really hoping, we see a lot of the industry there, the supply chain in particular, because I think it's important we get together and particularly, I say, set ourselves up, because this first quarter in 2026 is going to be instrumental. It's going to set the pace. It's going to set the groundwork, basically, for what we are going to do in 26. And if it's not quite how we would really, really like, we need to figure out how we can make it work.
Yeah.
Make sure that we stabilize our businesses, stabilizing our supply chain. It may not go our direction, but we need to prepare ourselves mentally. And I think that is just as important as having a win-win, basically, in the results in AR7. It's not the end of the world, but I'm really hoping we get a positive result in AR7.
I think you've hit the nail on the head about it be, getting ourselves together for quarter one, because the thing is, we see you have these signals in the major press, right? So, Shell coming out, right? Which, it's...
We knew what was going on.
We knew there was, with 27 gigawatts, in hindsight, there was some keys going to be given back, right? But so you've had these big signals that us in the industry kind of go, that was not unexpected, kind of makes sense, this type of thing. So actually, the industry needs that first, needs to get together to actually, because we will be hit by signals. These, there'll be things that will echo into the mainstream press. The Mail's takeover of the Telegraph. I'm going to be a bit political.
But with the narrative.
We've got an ecosystem, we will have a much bigger conservative media ecosystem with that. And if they want to get on a sort of an anti-renewables kind of campaign trajectory, that could be quite powerful.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we are aligned, that we're working with pragmatically, and that we're not put off by some of these signals, and that we coordinate on the comms front as well as the execution front.
Yeah, I think addressing that disinformation is going to be really important.
I think it's going to get far more. I'm hoping we don't go down the route of the US in the UK. But to me, there's worrying signs for that. So I think our sort of, that being short, blunt jabs rather than sort of trying to over-explain why we have curtailment or something else. I think we need to be very sharp with things.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I'll be getting my chinos out. And my jacket and my...
No Christmas shirt.
And my dress trainers. No. This is too bright for... Maybe for the evening.
Oh,
maybe for the evening, for the dinner.
If anyone's got any dinner invitations for us, we're open to them. So look, let's wrap it up there. I think this was a really good conversation around leapfrogging over the last two series. As we said, I think we've a lot more to dig on it, and we would welcome questions and, you know, ideas from the audience. And obviously we're going to be looking into speaking to some industry experts in country in some cases.
I definitely want to do
just
that.
to bring a little bit of a deeper analysis in. By no means we're experts in this side. This is just opening up the conversation. So how about, John, we sign it off for today? I mean, for me, Una Brosnan, thank you very much for joining it, or for tuning in on the Revolting Podcast. I'm going to leave the final sign off to John, as always.
Hi, so thank you for spending a bit of time with us today and tomorrow when you listen to this for the second time. And we are the Revolting Podcast. So please hit subscribe, like, leave comments, good ones only, and keep the rotor rotating, the head banging, and we'll see you again soon at Scottish Renewables Offshore Wind, or online soon. Thank you.
Thank you.